my mind, if what you're learning in school cannot be supported from the real world by your parents, we're learning something wrong in school. Whatever you're learning in school, that means is not applicable to the real world and frankly has no bearing on what we should be doing there. We're not giving you true life skills and we're not really preparing you for a very, very changing environment around you. So I think a big piece of this needs to be really rediscovering what that is and thinking about that collaboration very, very strongly in a completely redesigned fashion instead of really raising the importance of schools and teachers to a point where, honest, they have reached a breaking point and they feel the burden of doing everything from social emotional learning all the way to literacy and numeracy, all the way to building connections to the real world, all on them. Because the reality is that much you can do in a 7-hour day in a 4-wall classroom. And there's so much more you can unlock if you actually open that out and said, look, learning can happen for 24 hours and through anybody who's next to you. Because I think one more point to bring up here is that while COVID was a huge shock to our education system, it was really because it affected almost all the world's children. But unfortunately, this is just one in a very long list of interruptions to education that the more marginalized children in our society face regularly. Fahad will give you examples to how many kids were out of school in Lebanon even prior to this situation. Akanksha will give you those examples from India. Ashwini will give you real-life examples of people he's worked with. But the data says that there's 75 million children every year who have been pushed out of school because of armed conflict, forced displacement, climate change-induced disasters, and protracted crises. This is not a one-time incident. This is something that happens regularly. So unless we find ways for them to continue learning, as you pointed out, Amrita, that divide will continue to be true, and then what we'll be solving for is only one group of children. And this, of course, doesn't count for, as Akanksha was pointing out, the maybe 25 million children we're talking about who might be dropping out of school after this COVID crisis ends. So I just want to put that out as a provocation to say, how do we redesign thinking about learning everywhere and using everyone we have in our network to make that learning happen through every real life instance, which can be used as a stimulation for the same.
The resilience really for our community means to be success, to be grow against a challenging and unjust ecosystem. And this unstable, unjust, challenging ecosystem can be, this is the first time we have globally seen the pandemic and students out of school. But there are many multiple reasons that Fahad also mentioned, that the children out of school for many reasons. In our region, the pandemic, it is not just an example of that students going out of school. Previously also students were out of school. And for them, the education mean to be success, whether it is economical, social, or the self-expression. And the collaboration, it's transforming these type of activities in children. In a school, we just focus upon the learning outcome, it's literacy, numeracy. But what about the self-expression? What about their creativity? What about their entrepreneurial capabilities? And let's take into the real life scenario. And they really created, some of the students in collaboration with us really created business among all. And that was we understand that what education mean to be succeed. As I mentioned previously, whether it is economic, social, or the self-expression. And so for these three outcomes, apart from the learning outcome of numeracy and literacy, which only playing 10 to 12% in their career, and most of the 80% it's depend upon the other skills, is not happening without collaboration. And this become transformative to become a just equilibrium ecosystem and shift that unjust equilibrium ecosystem.
I think there's almost a need to really talk about in a big way, like what is the purpose of education even to begin with, right? Like before getting into the what and the how, like can we just talk about the why? Why is it that we all need an education, right? And if the belief is that you need an education just so that you're literate, it'll lead you to very different answers. Versus if the purpose of education is what Ashwini was saying, right? Or what we believe at Teach for India, which is the holistic development of an individual to realize their full potential, for individuals to thrive. And when you look at it that way, I would say it's quite selfish, right? Like, then it doesn't matter where you are in the socioeconomic category. Like, for the nation to really thrive, you need every individual to be able to kind of operate at their best capacity. And so it becomes something that's really important, and everyone has a stake. But I would kind of go back to that, because if you take that larger holistic purpose, then the decisions you make are very different, right? Then social, ethical, emotional skills become really important. The life skills that kids are getting become really important. Again, I think what's really top of mind for me, similar to what I think Janvi was also saying, like, the world now moves at a much faster pace, right? So we need individuals who are, obviously don't just have the basic skills, but really have the know how to learn, right? Like, have the ability to seek out the knowledge, to navigate quickly, to go down ambiguous paths, 21st century skills, critical thinking, problem solving. So again, I think when I think of all of that together, a few other things become really important, right? So then it's not just schools, it's the role that communities play, the role that students themselves play. And another big one on my mind there is also the role that potentially technology can play, right? Like, if we're talking about access and equity, there's a big role that technology can play in as millions of people in India are coming online, in helping with all of this. So those are just, I think, a few thoughts on, if we kind of renegotiate the why, then we'll fundamentally start making different decisions on the hows and the whats. Having said that, the challenges are extremely, extremely real. I think even in our work at Teach for India, we've realized that, what's working for high income peers is, the context is just completely different, as you kind of go down the socioeconomic categories. So again, keeping a really, really close eye on the end user, right? And the end user in education are kids, but often are the stakeholder that I think we've been trained to not listen to, right? Like, we make policies, we roll out curriculum, often without really having consulted kids. So one big idea at Teach for India is, how do you really, really kind of listen to kids, really understand their experience? And when you do, just really important insights like what we saw in the panel before come up, right? Like, kids are having real struggles at home. There's, again, social emotional needs. Kids are, obviously there's learning losses, but there's various other milestones that kids are missing out. And so how do you really take that into account as part of decision making as well? So again, those are some of the ideas with which we are trying to make decisions at Teach for India, both in what we do, but also some of what we're advocating for, right? So in terms of school closures, I think obviously what was top of mind when the pandemic hit was what we were immediately seeing the impact of, right? Which was the health outcomes and the impact. But I think underneath the top of that iceberg now are all of these other things that are going to become really important, right? The learning losses that are accumulating, just kids wanting more exposure, wanting to be with their peers. And so how do we just make sure, we're listening to that stakeholder to shine light on some of those issues, and then to kind of really do it in a safe manner, right? So understanding that schools also have challenges. Is there a middle path? Can we start with community centers taking ownership first, small group learning, slowly really phasing into what's needed? So I would say those are like few big ideas on our mind. How do we really listen to kids? How do we really see the assets that exist both in kids and the communities, and how do we really try to use that why, what, and how to do things in a safe and phased manner?
So in my view, that there are brilliant leaders and organizations, as everyone is talking here, that are already resisting this kind of oppressive system. So I think our main role is to really identify them, give them space, and nurture them, and they will be able to lead this transformation from collective resilience into collective transformative resistance. So it really starts on this social capital and their own social capital, and how can we make use of this social capital. And at least in my view, and how we are trying to learn into transforming this system that we have, is by really building and investing in communities. Building in communities, bringing people together who are connected individuals, who have natural will, who have a common image of what success might look like, who have shared goals, who have similar intentions. And all this is built on collaboration. We cannot build a community without ensuring that collaboration is at the heart of how we are trying to function.
Amrita, maybe just to follow that with the concrete example of what we did over the last 2 years in order to build this collaboration and this sort of alternate learning experience, we were really thinking about how we can overcome this divide of privilege, including the lack of technology, lack of home support, access to teachers, and really, to Akanksha's point, also think about making learning a bit more holistic and relevant to the context that these students are in. So Ashwini was talking about this because really their organizations are the frontline heroes who utilized a lot of the work that we put together, but we designed this internet-free education resource bank, which was a collection of different sort of resources that included project-based learning resources, activities for those with special needs, math games, socio-emotional learning routines, and they were all designed for a screen-free, resource-free experience of learning. What was really amazing to see was how everyone came together to make this happen. So project-based learning is often thought of as this very lofty, very, very advanced pedagogical skill. They're very fancy skills too. Ashwini can tell you, we had people from communities who were not literate, who were helping their children with this kind of learning. We had parents who had no background in education, who suddenly were getting involved and recognizing that they can help. Because the reality is these are the people who are making it through their life that these children lead. So they understand that life a lot better than you and I understand it sitting so far away. So we had people participating from all walks of life and students themselves taking ownership, and as Ashwini was saying, going beyond and above what we were doing with them. So really what I feel is that if we just design experiences a little intentionally with the idea of everyone participating, and in some ways give them options to participate, because if you speak to parents and you speak to communities, they often feel afraid to participate. I myself, as a parent of 2 children, feel afraid to challenge the teacher that they have in school, because the teacher knows best, and this is what we've always learned. But how much pressure can we put on that poor teacher to do everything from social emotional learning to entrepreneurship to literacy and numeracy? And how can we really take on a little bit of it and feel confident to know that even we know things? We have lived this life also understanding and learning and absorbing from around us. So that's why we put this together. And I really think it was a real experience in understanding how people can come together to help children in this learning journey.
Schoolgoer students in their village, and with a less instruction they start doing projects, simple projects, to understand counting, to understand selling, to understand shop, to understand costing, pricing, budgeting, very little things with the real time activities. So what the first 6 months it take to ignite community to understand what is the real learning. And after ignition, they influence others. They influence the Gram Panchayat unit. They influence their sarpanch to make a space that children can learn a real life skill apart from schooling and all. So they influence the Gram Panchayat, the local ecosystem, and now they own the system. You can come here, all of you invited in Udaipur, Rajasthan. We have a a great design of Maker Lab where every desk, every chair made by students. They made arrangement for their own self. They have their own learning materials created by themselves.
To quickly summarize a few points that really stood out in today's discussion is that maybe we need to start, instead of looking at resilience, start looking at it in terms of a transformative resistance to a certain way of existing and a certain way of being. And I think this pandemic has shown us the power of collaboration and the power of community. And going forward, what becomes really important is to continue really sort of building that spirit of community and involving as many people as possible, getting insights from them, ensuring that they feel included, to create an inclusive, participatory education that ensures equal access to everyone. And I think the larger takeaway that we can take from this is that it's super important to redefine what it means to be an educator. An educator needn't necessarily be someone who is a teacher in a classroom, but it's the parent in the community, it's the business person, it's a government official, it's anybody in a state of leadership needs to truly invest in education and really bring out that spirit of collaboration to get the best outcomes.